Welcome to the Alaska Weather Show. I'm meteorologist Peter Chan. I'll be your host on this Sunday evening, September 12th, 2021. And many things to talk about tonight. We have a low pressure system moving inland into the southwest interior, just currently along coastal areas of Bristol Bay. It's bringing some strong gusty winds, rainfall amounts in excess of an inch across portions of the Alaska Peninsula today, and even the potential for some isolated thunder before the system begins to weaken later into Monday night and Tuesday. And overall, we are entering into a more progressive fall pattern. We're going to see another low pressure system move across the central eastern Aleutians into the Alaska Peninsula Wednesday and then spread into the Gulf Thursday into Friday. Overall, though, later toward the tail end of the month, toward the equinox, we're looking at September 18th through the 22nd. Cooler and drier weather in the southwest and south central areas for that time frame. But we do continue to have wind advisories that are in effect for this Sunday evening through Monday late afternoon, early evening for the central and eastern Alaska range, particularly around Denali Park, Healy, Donnelly, where south winds of 30 to 40 miles an hour could gust as high as 50 to 60 miles an hour, especially through some of the passes and higher elevations. Also, didn't get a chance to put it in, but dense fog advisory for along the Arctic coast, including Dead Horse, Prudhoe Bay, eastward to Katepik, and that'll be overnight into early Monday morning. We also have some stronger storm force winds have occurred. At least we have a storm warning in effect for the mouth of Cook Inlet for the Barren Islands east and west, as well as areas of Bristol Bay, and that will remain in effect for the overnight hours. We can see the wind forecasts, stronger winds there impacting Kodiak Island, the northern portion of the Alaska Peninsula into Bristol Bay, and also the occluded front that's going to be lifting northeastward into south central areas is going to increase southeast winds that'll turn southerly, and as that happens, that will get the turn again arm and connect winds in the Anchorage area going this evening, where we could see some winds gusting 50 to near 60 miles an hour in some of the higher elevations there, especially east of Anchorage and up toward Palmer. Also, we'll see those winds increasing across areas of the Alaska range, but here is the winds you can see coming in there tonight. First, a southeasterly component veering to the south-southwest as the occluded front lifts north and east, and a broad area of stronger winds across much of the western half of the Gulf back through Bristol Bay for Monday afternoon, and that encompasses portions of the southwest, so that'll have not only impact to marine interests, but also aviation as far as turbulence and low-level wind shear, so keep that in mind. Rainfall will not be quite as heavy as it was across the Alaska Peninsula, western arm of the Alaska Range today, but still some areas could see locally an inch or more of rain as we go across the north central Gulf Coast into northern parts of the Panhandle along the coastal mountains. And by the time we get into Monday night into Tuesday, look for those rains to begin to diminish as the system overall, low pressure over the southwest part of the state will fill and begin to weaken. So that means the precipitation will become more showery in nature as well as lighter. So on the satellite imagery, the bright enhanced white cloud tops there over the southwest, that's associated with low pressure now that's approaching Dillingham, moving up out of Bristol Bay. Central pressure is almost down near 980 millibars. So this has been one of the stronger low pressure systems we've seen so far this late summer and the beginning of the early fall season. And you can see that occluded front extending eastward out into the Gulf. That feature is going to be lifting northeastward as we go through the night, and again bringing some stronger winds and areas of rain along it. There could even be an isolated rumble of thunder overnight there, especially east of Kodiak Island. And as the front approaches the Panhandle, there could also be a potential for an isolated rumble of thunder from coastal areas of Yakutat down towards Sitka on Monday afternoon. And as you can see, low pressure sits back over the southwest portion of the state. And it's just going to gradually sit and spin there with little pieces of energy rotating around it, keeping the precipitation going. But as we get into Monday night and Tuesday, we're going to see the winds begin to diminish, and the aerial extent of the precipitation will become more scattered and showery in nature. The next low pressure system located there in the central Aleutians on Tuesday afternoon will strengthen and work its way across the Alaska Peninsula Wednesday, spreading into the Gulf Thursday and Friday. Low temperatures Monday morning, upper 40s to near 50 across the Panhandle, mid to upper 40s across the south central areas. And as we go into Monday afternoon, highs are only going to be area-wide in the 50s with rather extensive cloud cover and areas of rain or scattered showers. Temperatures Tuesday morning will generally be mid-40s, mid-upper 40s in the southeast Panhandle and lower mid-40s, except for a tad warmer right along the coast there for Tuesday morning, with highs again generally in the lower to mid-50s area-wide on Tuesday. Along the Arctic coast, Monday morning lows will be mid-30s, and a few areas could be down near freezing along the Alcan border in the northeast because of clear skies early tonight, otherwise lows in the lower 40s. Highs on Monday only near 40 along the Arctic coast, upper 40s western Seward Peninsula, 50s, maybe an isolated 60 there at Fairbanks. And then on Tuesday morning, lows will generally be in the mid-30s along the Arctic coast. Again, still that potential for some fog. And other areas in the interior, upper 30s to lower 40s, with highs near 40 along the Arctic coast and generally lower, maybe mid-50s there into east central areas. Along the southwest, lows will be generally in the 40s, and then highs lower 50s under cloudy skies and areas of rain on Monday afternoon, and then lower 40s across the interior, including places like Antioch and Bethel, and areas along the Aleutian chain, mid-upper 40s, with highs Tuesday afternoon in the upper 40s to near 50 degrees across the interior, and mid-50s Alaska Peninsula and the Aleutians. Quick check, temperatures will be below normal over southwest Alaska, and also precipitation below normal then as well. So maybe a cooler and drier weather here as we head toward the equinox. Needless to say, fall is here.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
It's time now for your aviation weather, and if you are planning a flight Monday into Tuesday, the main weather feature we're going to be watching is low pressure that's going to be residing over the southwest part of the state. It'll be gradually in the process of filling and weakening, but rather persistent, and the circulation around it is going to have some stronger winds, particularly associated with an occluded front that'll be working its way up through the north central Gulf into south central interior, as well as approaching the Panhandle. So we'll talk more about that, but there is certainly even the possibility of some isolated thunder in the western Gulf as this in the wake of this frontal system, and especially there east of Kodiak Island Monday morning. As we go through the day, we'll see the potential for isolated thunder there in the north central and central Gulf, with IFR conditions across the inner waterways of the southeast, and then back up along the north slope Arctic coast, as well as from the Bering Strait down through Nunavik Island, and also the far western Aleutians. Tuesday morning, look for still a possibility of a rumble of thunder there along coastal areas of the Panhandle, with IFR west of Yakutat toward Cordova and out across much of the southwest, and then back up along Nunavik Island through the Bering Strait and the Brooks Range, North Slope, Arctic coast. And for Tuesday afternoon, conditions may improve a bit over the North Gulf, though there'll still be some weather there. The low pressure will continue to weaken across the southwest part of the state, with IFR along the Arctic and northwest coast down through the Bering, back down through St. Lawrence and Nunavik Island, and then out across the central and western Aleutians. Past conditions on Monday for Anaktuvuk will be VFR becoming MVFR. That'll also be the case for Atigan. Further south and west, Lake Clark and Merrill will be MVFR. Could see a brief period of IFR conditions as the day progresses. And then for Rainy Pass, as we begin to round out there through the Alaska Range, MVFR conditions. Windy Pass should start out MVFR becoming VFR. And farther east, Isabel will also see MVFR conditions become VFR. And at this point, Mentasta should hold on to VFR conditions during the day on Monday. And then further south and west, Tanita should generally be VFR. As we go a little further south, though, Portage will be MVFR. And further east, there across the northern Panhandle, Chilkoot and White should see MVFR conditions deteriorate to IFR conditions as that occluded front approaches coastal areas of the Panhandle, bringing additional wind and some gustier winds. Freezing levels Monday morning are generally around 8,000 feet in the Panhandle, though in the mountains there's some areas where it comes down to the surface to 2,000 feet there in southern Yukon. And then back across the northern and eastern interiors, look for freezing levels between 6 to near 8,000 feet, dropping down to about 4,000 feet across the southwest, and as we extend out below that through the Alaska Panhandle eastern Aleutians. Best chance for some icing will be between 9,000 and a flight level of 19,000 feet along the North Gulf Coast from the eastern Kenai down into the Panhandle, and then western areas between 7 and 17,000 feet, the Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island, back up toward the YK Deltas and Nunavik Island, and as low as 5 to 12,000 feet west and north of St. Lawrence. Strongest winds aloft, 135 knot jet core out there over the lower Gulf, with southwesterly winds coming on shore there through the British Columbia and the Panhandle, and then back out toward the eastern Aleutians. There is jet stream level winds of 85 to just over 100 knots from the northwest. At mid-levels, we have kind of a double barrel low pressure system and circulations around that. You can see the counterclockwise flow, some of the stronger winds there coming up through the Kenai from the south, associated with the occluded front near the surface, and then back down to west-northwesterly across much of the Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutians, 40 to 45 knots. And the more significant winds in excess of 50 knots possible near Nunavik Island along the southwest coast into the Alaska Peninsula and just off of Kodiak Island will translate to the potential for isolated severe turbulence on Monday, especially in the vicinity of Nunavik Islands along the southwest coast, Bristol Bay, crossing the Alaska Peninsula and through and east of Kodiak Island. Elsewhere, pretty widespread areas of considerable moderate turbulence from the southeast Panhandle on up into the south central interior, including the Alaska Range curving back toward Kotzebue Sound. So that does it for your aviation weather. If you are able to get out, have a safe flight.
You guys got everything tied down back there? Yeah. Yep. We're going through the lee of St. Elias, so there might be some turbulence.
Fasten seatbelt sign on.
Well, who am I to tell you what to do?
There are tens of thousands of glaciers in Alaska. Some stunning cliffhangers, others wide glaciers that come down to meet the ocean tides. Some, like this one we flew over in August, are easily visible from low Earth orbit and are mesmerizing from 1,000 feet above and have trees growing on top of their soil-laden boundaries. Those glaciers, although they represent only a fraction of the world's ice, are contributing much more than their share to sea level rise. Chris Larson and his colleagues have repeatedly measured 220 of them in a small single-engine otter, measuring their height with lasers and their depth with radar, and watching them change from season to season and year to year. But Alaskan glaciers are also different. We're only just figuring out how they all behave. Data from flights like these, part of NASA's Operation Icebridge, can help fill the gaps. Chris and radar specialist Martine Trufer are both from the University of Alaska Fairbanks and both seasoned Alaskan pilots. But they rely on their good friend and legendary bush pilot Paul Kloss and his 35,000 hours in the cockpit to fly the incredibly demanding flight lines the mission requires.
And does it help you guys being pilots too?
I would like to think so, but
Watching Paul fly and seeing what he does, it's kind of like trying to learn quantum mechanics in kindergarten.
You know, I can fly my airplane around, but just seeing what Paul does in this extremely challenging environment in the mountains while trying to follow a specific flight line at a specific altitude above ground, negotiating winds, topography, maybe occasional low-level clouds that you have to get around, and just managing all that is just several levels above what I could do as a pilot.
Well, I think the first time I came here to this park, I was probably 4 years old with my father. I've been blessed to be able to fly in lots of places in the world, all over the place, actually, almost every continent. I guess I'm always looking for some place that might be better than this, but I haven't found it.
Paul's plane is about 60 years old and is the first single-engine otter ever retrofitted with a 1,000 horsepower engine, which makes takeoffs feel effortless and gives Paul the ability to negotiate wild terrain, which he certainly did during the first 2 incredible science flights of this campaign. And with sunny skies and relatively calm air, we covered 3 vastly different pieces of ice. While Paul fueled up the plane, Chris gave us a preview of the day's science and scenery.
So it has one of the greatest coastal reliefs anywhere in the world. So it's between the ocean and the summit of Mount St. Elias, which is 18,008 feet high. It's less than 10 miles. There's a stupendous amount of mountain right off the ocean. It's hard to beat it anywhere in the world. It might be the prettiest for me. It's absolutely stunning. From here in McCarthy, we'll cross one of the bigger precipitation gradients in Alaska too. Here it's about 10 inches of precipitation a year, and we'll go over to an area where it's on the order of 200 inches per year. So it's from one of the driest parts of Alaska to one of the wettest parts of Alaska in about 45 minutes flight time.
Whoa, that's pretty good.
That's awesome. You want to do Tyndall next?
Sure, where you want?
If the winds are calm now, might as well grab it.
First, we came to the rugged landscape of Icy Bay, which not that long ago wasn't a bay at all. It was filled with ice. Tidewater glaciers in this region can make dramatic advances and retreats as they feed on high rates of snowfall and then retreat as they're melted by warm ocean waters. Like the Tyndall Glacier seen here, most of these glaciers have retreated dramatically over the last 100 years. But nearby Yahtzee Glacier, after years of retreat, is currently the most rapidly advancing glacier in Alaska. Overall, though, the Icebridge Alaska surveys, from the Denali region in the north to the Juneau ice field in the southeast, have documented pretty substantial thinning of glacial ice. Areas seen here in orange and red show between about 10 and 15 feet of thinning per year.
1,200.
It's a nice waterfall up there from the hanging ice.
We very first started profiling this, Paul, this gravel fan in the one in the valley next to it didn't exist.
Yeah, I was going to say,
this was
look
deep.
at all the good landing spots here.
Yeah,
There's no place to land here before.
no, it was deep water.
After covering several of Icy Bay's glaciers, given that it was time for lunch, just like that, we landed in this unforgettable spot. Flying eastward, leaving Icy Bay behind, we came to the mighty Malaspina, one of the Earth's great examples of a Piedmont glacier that spills out like pancake batter onto a broad plain as it approaches the sea. It surges at uneven intervals, creating dramatic patterns on its surface as it distorts the moraines of rock and soil borne along by the glacier. The Malaspina is less dynamic than the Yahtzee and is only melting at about the average rate for Alaska, but that could change quickly.
It has the potential for being one of the bigger geographic evolutions in Alaska. Certainly My son will be able to witness some big geography changes there. There's potential for it being connected with the ocean through some narrow lagoons, estuaries, which would take a little bit of coastal erosion, but it's not too hard to imagine that where the Malaspina Glacier is now could become a large bay.
The data that Martine's radar provides could reveal how vulnerable the Malaspina is to melting by the nearby ocean. Here we see the radar returns from the surface of the glacier, and here is something that Chris's lasers can't see, the rocky bed of the glacier, giving us both clues as to what's happening under the ice, as well as a measurement of its thickness. Finally, we came to the Yakutat ice field, 300 square miles of absolutely doomed ice perched high in the mountains. Researchers even debate how this ice field came to be at all, since in its current configuration, it's hard to imagine how it could capture enough snow to form glacial ice. And so, even if the Arctic weren't warming faster than the rest of the planet, this area would be likely to melt within a century or two. But with many other glaciers, it's easier to see the connection between a warming planet and ice loss. Thanks to data from IceBridge and other surveys, we now have a good estimate of the current rate of loss from Alaskan glaciers, 75 gigatons a year. While airborne observations over Alaskan glaciers have provided a rich record of change in the area, those efforts are now augmented by NASA's newest ice measuring tool, ICESat-2. With 6 laser beams of its own, and orbiting the Earth every 90 minutes, the satellite will carry on the record of Alaskan change. For their part, Chris and his team will continue to do their surveys for at least the next 2 years, helping to validate the ICESat-2 data and make further detailed observations over the stunning glaciers of Alaska.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
In your marine weather, we start out with the sea ice edge, and as we approach mid-September, we're almost a week or two away from the minimum ice extent or the farthest north retreat we can expect for this season before the ice begins to rebuild back toward the south, sliding through the fall into the winter solstice. But right now, plenty of open water along the Arctic and northwest coasts. And as for Monday's marine forecast, southeast areas are going to watch an occluded front approach the coast. Winds will be picking up southeast to south across the inner waterways at 25 knots, with gusts up to 40 knots possible in the vicinity of Petersburg, with waves 5 to as high as 8 feet there at the mouth of Dixon Entrance. And then along the coast, look for southeasterly winds with 25 knots, though you could see westerly gales in the vicinity of Yakutat and waves building 11 to 14 feet. Tuesday, winds will come down a bit out of the south across the inner waterways, 20 knots, waves generally running about 4 feet, and more of a westerly component to the wind behind that front or trough with winds of 20 knots and waves 9 to 12 feet. South central areas, we'll see 40-knot gale force winds off the Kenai, northeast of Kodiak, as well as at the mouth of Cook Inlet, and with waves running 12 to 14 feet. 25 knots from the southeast, 6-footers there in Prince William Sound, and 20 knots out of the east there north of Kenai on up toward Anchorage with waves of 4 or 5 feet. Winds across the region on Sunday will generally shift more to a west-southwest direction. 25 knots off the Kenai with waves of 8 to 9 feet. And the mouth of Cook Inlet still could see waves of 6 feet coming down to about 3 feet as you get north of Kenai toward Anchorage. And then on Monday, Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island, southwest winds to 35 knots across Kodiak Island with waves of 11 to as high as 18 feet offshore there of Kodiak Island, and 35 to near 40-knot westerly gales across both the North Pacific and Bering sides with waves running 13 to 17 feet. By Tuesday, winds will come down a bit southwest to west Kodiak Island around 25 knots and 25 to near 30 knots. From the southwest across the Alaska Peninsula with waves 8 to 10 feet on the Pacific side and 12 to 13 feet from Port Hayden on up toward Bristol Bay. Eastern part of the Aleutians on Monday will see winds from the west at 25 to near 30 knots, waves generally 8 to 12 feet, both on the Bering and Pacific side, trying to turn back more around toward the southeast west of Kiska as the next low pressure system begins to approach the western half of the Aleutians from the southwest out of the North Pacific. And as that low moves up into the western half of the Aleutian chain on Tuesday, we'll see winds trying to turn more southerly again across the eastern Aleutians at 25 to near 30 knots. Waves 7 to 10 feet on the North Pacific side and generally 8 to 10 feet on the Bering side. And then for the west coast on Monday, strongest winds, highest waves will be between St. Paul and St. George and the mainland, west-northwest, 30 to 35 knot gales and waves of 10 to 12 feet. Whereas winds coming offshore, the circulation of low pressure over the interior of the southwest, we're looking at northeast winds to 20 knots across Norton Sound, waves running about 4 feet. And then a little bit more of a mix of winds on Tuesday. Those strongest winds still off the southwest coast there, 30 knots from the west, waves 7 to 12 feet, St. Paul toward the mainland, and turning a bit more northwest to north there south of St. Lawrence, and waves generally around 8-9 feet. Along the Arctic coast, winds will be easterly at 15 to 20 knots with waves of 3 to 4 feet. Turning northeasterly, 25 to 30 knots through the lower Chukchi Sea and the Bering Strait to north of St. Lawrence, with waves of 6 to 7 feet. And then on Tuesday, still an easterly component to the wind there along the Arctic coast, 15 to 20 knots, waves 3 to 4 feet, and northeast winds continuing, especially south there of Utqiagvik, going down into west of Kotzebue Sound at around 20 to 25 knots, and waves 4 to 7 feet through the lower Chukchi Sea, turning more northerly once you get past the Bering Strait. And here's Monday's weather map. We have low pressure centered over the southwest interior with a little lobe spinning on up there just north of Kodiak Island. And as we go into Tuesday, look for low pressure to continue to gradually weaken and fill. That means winds will be coming down and areas of precipitation will become more scattered and lighter in nature. So that's the show for this Sunday evening. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great week ahead.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.